Welcome to another video in the Fundamentals of Marx series. Today's topic will be the law of the tendency of the rate of profit to fall. Many books and articles have been written on the law, and in reality it deserves a series of its own. The purpose of this video, however, is to familiarize ourselves with the basics of the law and what Marx was arguing when he introduced it. Marx was not the first to argue that there was a tendency for the rate of profit to fall. He was preceded by liberal economists Adam Smith and David Ricardo. Like many aspects of Marxist theory, the law of the tendency of the rate of profit to fall is not unique to Marx, and Marx himself always acknowledged his intellectual predecessors. To better understand the law of the tendency of the rate of profit to fall, let's look at an example. Say the socially necessary labor time needed to produce one television is 4 hours per worker. A TV company called Sony employs a total of 100 workers and follows a standard 8-hour working day schedule. If it takes a worker 4 hours to build a single TV from start to finish, Sony can produce a total of 200 TVs in one day. For all other companies, this is the standard rate of production per day, though the total output may vary depending on the total number of workers employed. Let's say that one day Sony unveils an assembly machine that can reduce the time it takes a worker to produce one TV by 50%. In other words, Sony's workers can now produce a TV in 2 hours instead of the socially standard 4. In total, Sony can now put together 400 TVs per day, holding all other variables constant. Not only does Sony now have more TVs to sell on the market, the comparatively cheaper costs allow Sony to sell their new TVs just below the socially standard value. Now every consumer on the market is inevitably drawn to Sony's lower prices. As a result, Sony sells most, if not all, the TVs it produces in a given window of time, all while drawing customers away from the competing companies. Sony's competition scrambles to catch up to Sony's production efficiency, hoping to close the gap so that they too can offer desirable prices and put a stopper on the customers they are bleeding to Sony. As a result, the new standard time for producing a TV gradually shifts to 2 hours instead of the previous 4. In the process, Sony's temporary advantage has given it windfall profits. What Sony chooses to do with that extra income is up to the company's leadership. Ultimately, we are interested in the societal consequences Sony's innovation had in the long run. By transferring more of the production process into the sphere of machinery and technology, Sony has shifted the ratio between constant capital and variable capital. Remember that constant capital represents the part of the production process made up of the means of production, whereas variable capital represents the workers' input of their labor power. As we have seen in previous videos, it is the labor power of the workers that has the ability to create new value in a finished commodity. This surplus value is crucial to the capitalist because it is the basis of the enterprise's profit. The smaller the relative input of labor power in the production process, the lower the surplus value, thus resulting in lower rates of profit. Of course, Marx pointed out that this tendency can be offset by decisions made by the capitalists, as well as by systemic factors. One way a capitalist can combat the falling rate of profit is to change the rate of exploitation. The rate of exploitation is expressed in the following equation. In short, the equation represents the ratio between paid and unpaid labor of the worker. Paid labor represents whatever wage is required for the worker to be able to reproduce his or her potential to put in labor power into the production process. As we talked about in the surplus value video, this quantity has varied across place and time and has depended on a variety of factors. Unpaid labor is the very important part of the working day where the worker works past his or her wages to produce more for the capitalist. To offset the fact that the overall quantity of surplus value per commodity is falling as a result of the increases in productivity, the capitalist can change the S to V ratio, attempting to add more hours to the working day. Marxian laws explain general tendencies. In other words, just because what we have discussed in the formulas and examples appears to be abstractly true, it does not necessarily account for all behavior of capital or what causes that behavior to manifest itself in different ways. Marxian tendencies acknowledge the presence of counter-tendencies. Patterns continuously interact with their counterparts and change over time. For example, there's a tendency for profits between competing capitals to equalize, but this pattern is challenged by the counter-tendency of competing capitals in the same sector to have differentiated rates of profit. Ultimately, the tendency of the rate of profit to fall comes to a rather intuitive conclusion. As we continue to automate the production process, goods become cheaper and cheaper to produce. The logical end stage of this tendency is an economy where everything is automated, including the production of the machines that produce our commodities. With every stage of the production process fully automated, commodities will be produced at no variable cost at all. With human labor written out of the equation, no new value would be created, meaning capitalist enterprises would have no means to acquire profit from the production process. This observation is one of the many internal contradictions of capitalism. Competition, a mechanism inherent to the capitalist production process, drives the rate of profit down. In search of acquiring a temporarily higher profit than their competition, capitalists collectively bring down the overall rate of profit. The LTRPF is highly controversial both inside and outside Marxist circles. Diving into all of the empirical and theoretical critiques of the law would require a much longer and substantially more dry video. However, it is worth mentioning some of the bigger arguments. One of the biggest empirical critics was a Japanese Marxist economist named Okishio. His theorem in the middle of the 20th century demonstrated that increasing investment in constant capital did not result in a drop in the rate of profit. The temporal single system interpretation, or TSSI, of Marx's value theory was a response to Okishio's theorem. Advocates of the TSSI pointed out that Okishio's definition and subsequent measurement of the rate of profit necessarily resulted in a rejection of Marx's law. Okishio measured the rate of profit by taking profit as a percentage of the replacement cost. Replacement cost is the cost of replacing machinery and equipment after it expires. TSSI scholars believed that Marx's understanding of the rate of profit was based on profit as a percentage of the amount of money that had actually been invested in production. The problem with Okishio's approach, as the TSSI scholars argued, was that it compared prices between two static points in time. Replacement costs of machinery and equipment at some point down the line would always be smaller than their cost when they were first purchased due to the investment in constant capital. Okishio's approach meant that as productivity increased and replacement costs decreased, the denominator would get smaller, and thus the rate of profit would rise in relation to Marx's equation. For the TSSI advocates, this is how Okishio inaccurately reaches the conclusion that investment in constant capital would not lower the rate of profit over time. The academic debates are ongoing, and are more extensive than this video can afford to cover in depth. There is plenty of literature out there for those of you who are interested in understanding the law better and applying it to modern conditions. We will end the video here. Thank you for watching, and leave your thoughts in the comment section below.